We are all partners in creation. No matter what faith or religion you're from, we all have to make this world a better place to prevent this from ever happening again.
Good evening and welcome to Metro Focus. I'm Jenna Flanagan. Saturday's attack at a Chabad of Poway synagogue near San Diego happened exactly 6 months to the day that 11 worshipers were killed at the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh. The shooting also occurred as the New York Times was admonished and later apologized for publishing this illustration, one that many say is similar to anti-Jewish propaganda seen in Nazi Germany. The statistics support it. Anti-Semitism in America is growing. The question is, why now and how do we get a handle on the hate? Joining me now with insight is Rabbi Mark Wilds, founder and director of the Manhattan Jewish Experience, and Evan Bernstein, regional director of the Anti-Defamation League. Gentlemen, welcome to you both to the program.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
First, again, I always start by asking what was your initial reaction to hearing about this latest shooting at a synagogue?
Well, first of all, I just want to express our condolences to the family of Lori, who was an extraordinary woman in Rabbi Goldstein's community, the synagogue that was attacked. The first reaction, obviously, is shock and horror. Again, this keeps happening. Mm-hmm. And as someone who conducts services every Shabbat, as I walk to synagogue, I'm always thinking about this now. It's on my mind. But my reaction is the same one as the very heroic rabbi who called for more people to come to services this coming Sabbath, this coming Shabbat. And he didn't just call for Jews to come to synagogue, but for all members of all faiths to attend their local houses of worship, because we cannot be dismayed or deterred. Terrorism, at the end of the day, has to be confronted, and we can't be living in fear. We need to do what the rabbi called us to do, which is to come back.
And the rabbi had some incredibly compelling words and a compelling story about that day. Evan, what were you thinking when you first heard about this?
You know, going into that Shabbat, it was over Passover, and, you know, for an organization that was so knee-deep in what happened after Pittsburgh, just 6 months earlier, going in, knowing it was 6 months, anniversary, you're thinking about those things, and the last thing you're thinking about is coming out of Shabbat and hearing about another shooting. And especially, you know, we've seen so many of these kinds of acts of hate in houses of worship around the globe, in the United States, the Jewish community, to the Christian community, to the Muslim faith. I just, again, like Rabbi said, the condolences go out to the entire community, to the rabbi, to Lori's family. It's just devastation, again, for the Jewish community, not only in San Diego, but across the globe. And I think there's just a general fear now. So many people I've spoken to are really, thinking twice about going to synagogue on Shabbat, and I think that's the last thing that Rabbi Goldstein wants, and it's the last thing the community wants. And I think we need to, as a strong community, come together and stand up to this kind of hate and show that we're not going to be deterred from being Jewish and being faithful to our religion.
But there is something to be said about the rise in white nationalism and anti-Semitism at the same time in this country. As I mentioned in the lead, there was a very unfortunate, disgusting image that was published in the New York Times. And that seems to be feeding into the same sort of narrative as it's becoming, I don't want to say normalized, but we're seeing it more and more. And so I'm wondering for both of you, where are you seeing the American zeitgeist, for lack of a better description, around the subject of hate?
Yeah, for the New York Times to publish, both in print and online, a cartoon like that of the democratically elected Prime Minister of the State of Israel, whether you like him or not. He is a leader, and he was elected by a majority vote in his people. And for the New York Times, that kind of publication to print such a really a disgusting and disgraceful cartoon, it just begins to legitimate and to make it okay to depict certain leaders in a certain kind of way. I'm all for free speech. Free speech is an incredible pillar of this great country, as it is in Israel and other democratic countries throughout the world. We cannot give up on free speech, but we have to be respectful, because there are crazies out there who somehow can perhaps be inspired by what becomes a normalization of hate.
And Evan, your thoughts?
I think, so many of the people that are perpetrating these acts of hate are lone wolves. They're not necessarily part of one particular group. And they are being radicalized online with what they're reading, what they're seeing. and to have basically the Rolls Royce of newspapers, the New York Times, publish such a horrific anti-Semitic cartoon. The kind of cartoons that we see right now in Middle Eastern newspapers, what we saw during the age of the Holocaust in Europe, it was appalling, and we're shocked by it. But I think it plays to what's going on also on the internet. We're seeing many more of these kinds of memes and images that are being put out there, and I think now we have to start holding platforms accountable for what's going on online. We have to hold our newspapers. Clearly, we need to hold the New York Times accountable. There needs to be some serious looking into what took place and how that happened and how the editorial board let that happen. But this is not the first time. This may be one of the most prominent times, but people that are capable of being radicalized are seeing this. They're seeing this information. They're seeing these kind of ads, and it's becoming normalized, and it's normal for them to then act out on it. People are, acting out with words on blogs and on Facebook and on Twitter. But now certain people are acting out with hate and with guns, and we cannot allow for that to continue and metastasize any further than it has.
I could go so much deeper into the problem of the radicalization online. However, I do want to turn to the example that we saw. One of the stories that came out of this shooting was the example of Miss K, Lori K, who lost her life. I'm wondering if there's something positive that we can take away from this story, as horrific as it was, the way this woman lived her life, the way that she actually was the one who stepped in front of the bullets to save her rabbi.
Yeah, I mean, what Evan just mentioned before about coming on Passover, which is the celebration of our freedom. And not only that, but Lori came to synagogue to recite a special prayer that's said on the last day of the holiday, the Yizkor, to remember her family that was not with her. And I think, as the rabbi said, Rabbi Goldstein of the synagogue, we want to do something positive with something negative. We want to react. In Judaism, theologically, we don't pretend to have all the answers for everything. Mm-hmm. And one of my teachers, the late and great Rabbi Soloveitchik, used to say, when something bad happens, the Jew doesn't ask why, because sometimes that's an exercise in futility. We don't really always know why, but we always ask what. What can we do with the situation? And what can we do with the legacy and memory of this great woman, who, by the way, was the one to secure the loan for this synagogue that was attacked 35 years ago? This woman was devoted to her community, to giving, and to standing up and protecting her rabbi and teacher. I mean, if we're not going to do something positive with that, that would just be a terrible shame. She did not die in vain, and one of the ways of making sure that she didn't is for all of us to come out more to synagogue, more to our houses of worship, and to do random acts of kindness, and to live the kind of life that Lori lived.
Evan, very quickly, because we're running out of time, but I know that you've done so much work with reaching out to other faith-based groups to try to create those connections and create those conversations. Is that the direction that we need to be headed?
We need to find, every direction possible. I think, where does hate come from? Anti-Semitism doesn't typically come from inside the Jewish community. It comes from outside the Jewish community. And I think a lot of times we try to, fight anti-Semitism in an echo chamber. And what we need to do is get out to the other, whether it's the Christian community, the Muslim community, other communities, Sikh communities, and have those conversations about what we have in common. Hate's a learned behavior. And unless we have conversations with other people, we're never going to be able to affect change. We're never going to be able to push back on anti-Semitism in a meaningful way. And we need to start in schools. We need to start with young people. We need to start in other houses of worship other than our own, so these kind of things don't happen and that we continue to stand together. I think one thing that can happen from this is that there's been so many of these kinds of shootings that there is a fatigue, as you mentioned earlier, about these kind of things happening. The only way we know that we can't have that fatigue is when we all stand together. And that when these things happen, we're all together, unified, one strong voice. And I think, based on this horrific act that took place in San Diego, we've seen that kind of outpouring of support, especially in the San Diego community. But we need to continue that across this country.
I think that's an excellent note to leave it on, gentlemen. I want to thank you both for joining us on Metro Focus to discuss another hard weekend that we've seen. Thank you.
Thank you.